Storytime, I was the toxic best friend. So a little background information, I was 16 and a sophomore in high school. And at the beginning of the year, I met this girl who we're gonna call Riley. Riley and I hit it off straight away. Like a week after knowing each other, she knew everything about me and I knew everything about her. Well, then she tells me about this guy that she's talking to, who we're gonna call Jay. She said that they would hook up sometimes and he would text her sometimes, but she said that I couldn't tell anybody because he said that it had to be a secret. So I tried telling her that he sounded like a fuckboy, but she decided she was going to do whatever she wanted and I was like, okay. So fast forward to the end of the year, he adds me on Snapchat. Okay, don't get me wrong, he was really hot, but I had my own thing going on, so I really didn't pay that much attention to him. And I thought he maybe added me on Snapchat to be like, oh my god, I really like your best friend. And then I also was caught between a rock and a hard place. Do I tell my best friend that the guy that she likes just added me on Snapchat? Or do I lie to her? Well, I was going to tell her until I got a Snapchat from him, like for part 2. Part 2 about how I was the toxic best friend. So like I said, I didn't know whether I should tell her that he added me on Snapchat or if I should. And I was going to until I got a Snapchat from him saying, hey, you're really pretty. I think we should talk sometime. So I ended up telling her about it because I felt really bad. And she was like, this is why I can't trust girls. Like, you need to unadd him right now. Like, fucking block him. And I'm like, I didn't even do anything. Like, what the fuck? So whatever. I end up blocking him. It's fine. Until he texts me one day. And he's like, hey, it's Jay. I think you blocked me on Snapchat, LOL. And him and I had talked a little bit in school and I kind of started to like him. Well, fast forward, him and I ended up hooking up a few times. We were talking a lot. And he hadn't been texting Riley as much. Well, the one night while I was sleeping over her house, my phone was going off a lot. And I didn't think to delete any of the messages, like for part 3.
Story time about how my husband stole my dog because I told his family that he's gay. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My husband and I had been married for 6 months before I realized he was gay. The way I found out is horrendous. Husband, almost ex, he has a gardening business. This means he works with a lot of guys. The guys that he started hiring were all very young, very attractive. Obviously, I didn't care because I never thought that he would be gay. Well, I come home one day early from work, only to find him and 3 other guys on the couch, doing different things to each other. I was horrified. I was seriously triggered and traumatized. You see, I had been essayed by 2 boys when I was in college, so walking into this literally made me vomit. Even got flashbacks. What did my husband do? The man kicked me out of the house, closed the door on me. So I proceed to start ringing the doorbell. So I decide to call 911 and say that there's 2 intruders in my house, which I mean there are. By the time the police come, they're all dressed up. Of course, it was my word against theirs. The police told me that all I could do was get a divorce. At the time, I had a 2-month-old puppy. My husband didn't really like the puppy. He was a lot of work, but it was my responsibility. After I caught him, I ran straight to his mom's house and spilled the beans. His mom and dad were furious. They called him, but he wouldn't answer his phone. Called my sister and she told me that I should just go live with her. I go home to grab my things and my puppy, but my puppy is nowhere to be found. That's when my husband told me that he probably ran away. This man refused to help me look for him. I'm filing a divorce, but it's been a month since I saw my puppy, and I know the puppy's somewhere in the house. My husband doesn't let me back into the house though, and the cops were absolutely no use. I'm planning on breaking in. I mean, what should I do? Give me advice. My stepbrother confessed that he has feelings for me, and now I'm catching feelings. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My dad was single for years after my mom and him split. I decided to move in with my dad because my mom and I don't have the best relationship. I was floored when I got to my new high school. There were so many cute boys, including my stepbrother. His mom was single and she was looking for a man. My dad and her met at a yoga class. They hit it off right away. I mean, right away. A month into their relationship, they wanted to move in together. During that month, I developed a crush on several boys, but my stepbrother was not one of them. You see, he had a girlfriend, and I am no homewrecker. But when we moved in together, we started hanging out a lot. He was making the effort to be with me all the time. First, I thought it was kind of sweet. Like, okay, we're like stepbrother and stepsister now. But no, he broke up with his girlfriend and he started hanging out with me every day after school. We started watching movies together. We were cooking together. We would do all our chores together. And then finally, our parents told us that they were engaged. So we knew this was going to be for the long run. Prom was nearing and a boy asked me out to prom. He grabbed my arm and made me swear that I wouldn't go out with this boy. And I asked him why. He said this guy was a player, that he would only try to do the dirty with me. Then he confessed that he was jealous. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I'm catching feelings for my stepbrother. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. That's when my stepbrother confessed that he was jealous. I mean, I knew that he liked me, but I didn't know that he liked me. Essentially, he told me that he did not want me going out with this boy to prom because he was really bad news. So I told him that I wouldn't. Went back to the boy and told him I couldn't go to prom with him. After that, my stepbrother asked me if I wanted to go to prom with him. Okay, everyone in school knew that our parents were engaged. Essentially, we're stepbrother and stepsister. But let me tell you, after his confession, I could not stop thinking about him. I mean, his room was right across from mine. He had so many girls girls chasing him at school. A few days later, his ex comes up to me at school and calls me a slut. Apparently, the rumor was going around that him and I were together. This girl was not happy. When I got in his car to go home with him, I broke down and started to cry. Then he told me that he told his ex that he had a crush on me. And then we kissed. And I had never been kissed like that. He was so sweet yet so passionate. We stare at each other at the dinner table. He tried to kiss me again at home, but I didn't let him. I'm gonna have to update you guys. What should I do about this?
Story time about how I came out to my homophobic parents. So a little background information. I was 14 or 15 and I was a freshman in high school. And all throughout middle school, I had been questioning my sexuality because I didn't really know what I was into, as do most kids my age. Well, due to this, I was bullied in school because people would always ask me, oh, do you like boys or girls? And when I would say that I don't know, they would call me slurs. So anytime that I got into a relationship, I would keep it a secret, and the only person that knew was my best friend. But the summer before my freshman year, I got together with my current boyfriend, and we're going to call him Andrew. Andrew and I met through Snapchat through a mutual friend. We started FaceTiming all the time, and we found out that we lived in the same area, so we started hanging out all the time as well. Well, eventually him and I started dating, and after about 3 or 4 weeks, we took our relationship a little bit further, and his parents knew that he was gay and that we were in a relationship. But my parents, on the other hand, did not know. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I came out to my very homophobic parents. So, like I said before, my boyfriend and I had decided to take our relationship a step further, and his parents knew that he was gay and that him and I were in a relationship. But my parents, on the other hand, did not know. They just thought that him and I were best friends that hung out every single day. But yeah, my parents think that doing the nasty before marriage is a sin, being gay is a sin. Pretty much doing anything is a sin. So the one day I was in my room watching RuPaul's Drag Race. By the way, I don't know if I pronounced that right. And then my mom walks in and she says, I don't want you watching these men in wigs and heels, acting like females, blah, blah, blah. That's a sin. Like, Mom, go get a fucking life. Thanks. And then she says, if I find out you're a part of this, you're going to need God and Jesus to protect you from me. So my boyfriend and I are in complete shock. Well, then I finally decided that I was going to grow some balls and tell my mom that I was a part of that community. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how I came out to my super homophobic parents. So, like I said, my mom was like, if you're a part of this community, you're going to need God and Jesus to protect you from me. And I was really upset. I started crying, and my boyfriend, he's like comforting me. I finally decided to grow some balls and tell her that I was, in fact, a part of the community. Well, I ended up getting my ass beat. They also told me that they were going to take me to a priest to get an exorcism. So I basically moved out of my parents' house and I moved into my uncle's house, who's a part of the LGBTQ community. And he's in full support of my boyfriend and I's relationship. I blocked both of my parents and I haven't talked to them ever since I moved out. Well, that's a lie. The only time that I did talk to them was to wish them a happy Mother's Day and happy Father's Day. But other than that, I decided that I want to be happy, and to be happy, I had to keep them out of my life.
Story time about how my parents caught me selling my undies online. Disclaimer, is not my story time of sending me on Instagram. I'm extremely spoiled. My family is extremely rich. This allows me to buy whatever I want. The problem is my dad caught me sneaking out of my window, so he grounded me for 2 months and took away my allowance. And my allowance is a lot. My dad usually gave me $150 a week. With that money, I would go to Starbucks every single day before school, and I would also treat my friends to Starbucks every now and then, more like every day. My friends and I would go to restaurants and have fancy dinners and lunches, and I also had a car. I would also go shopping almost every single Friday with my friends. I would get manicures and pedicures, and I could basically buy myself whatever I wanted just by asking my dad for the money. But now that I was grounded, that was not going to happen. By the way, I'm 20 now, but this was 3 years ago, so I was 17 when all of this happened. I can confidently say that I was like the queen bee in my high school. Number 1, I was in the cheerleading squad. Number 2, I was super pretty popular and had lots of money. Therefore, everyone wanted to hang out with me. I knew that I needed to maintain my status and also the life that I had become accustomed to. Not being able to go to Starbucks every single morning really made me depressed. That probably made you roll your eyes, but I said what I said. Now, there was no way I was gonna go get a job somewhere. You would never catch me working at a cafe or a restaurant or something like that. So I knew I had to start making my own money online somehow. I did some research and found out that people would sell pictures and video of their feet. So I signed up for this stupid website and decided to do it. The problem was that by the end of the week, I had only made $46. This was clearly not enough. So I did some more research and found out that you could actually sell your undies. So I took my last $200, went to Victoria's Secret and stocked up on undies. And this is when things get really fun. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my parents caught me selling my undies online. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I said me on Instagram. So I took my last $200, went to Victoria's Secret and stocked up on undies. I signed up to this website and within a week I had about 80 orders. So that means in 1 week I sold $2,000 worth of my own underwear. This is when I realized that I could charge way more than I had been. So I doubled the price and the following week I made $4,000. So here's the first mistake I made. I decided to tell my girlfriends about it and they decided to sign up and start selling their own undies. After a month, all of my friends and I were selling our undies, and we were all making bank. This also meant that we were spending lots of money. I started buying designer handbags and shoes. One of my friends even put a down payment to a car, and her parents started asking her tons of questions. And so did mine. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my parents caught me selling my undies online. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent me on Instagram. When my parents realized that I was buying all these designer bags and shoes, they started asking me questions. I was strong and I kept my mouth shut. Now my friends, on the other hand, who were also selling their undies, one of them got questioned by her parents and she gave up all the information. She even told her parents that I was the mastermind behind everything and that I had told all the other girls to start selling their undies, which was true. So it was official, I had been caught. Of course, my mom's friend runs straight over to my house and she starts spilling all the beans to my parents. My dad and mom came straight to my room and started rummaging through everything. That's when they find all my purses, my shoes, had stacks of cash in my drawers, and under my mattress. All of my friends got grounded, but my parents decided to take it a step further. They were so disgusted with me that they actually kicked me out of the house. But the good news is I had a lot of money, so I got myself a really nice apartment. So jokes on my parents. With all the money that I made, I decided to start a side hustle. I have my own employees and run my business from my house. My parents and I still talk, and my dad's even invested into my new company. When I look back at what I did, I do feel shame, but at the same time, I've become so successful from that money. What should I invest in next?
Story time. My best friend slept with my boyfriend on my birthday. So a little background information. I was 16 and a sophomore in high school. Well, I had this best friend who we are going to call Sarah. Her and I became super close over the summertime, but she was like on and off best friends with this other girl who we're gonna call Mackenzie. But I had this boyfriend who I was also really on and off with. And Sarah knew about all the problems within our relationship. Well, I guess I underestimated how close Sarah and Mackenzie were, because everything that I told Sarah, she went back and she told Mackenzie. And not to mention, Mackenzie was really close with my boyfriend. So of course, she told my boyfriend everything that I was saying. This ended up causing a huge fight between my boyfriend and I. Well, the night before my birthday, my boyfriend and I were going back and forth arguing, and around 12 a.m., on my birthday, I forced myself to fall asleep, and at around 1 a.m., I woke up to 20 Snapchat notifications, all from my boyfriend. And when I opened them, I saw the worst thing ever. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend slept with my boyfriend on my birthday. So like I said, I woke up at around 1 a.m. to 20 Snapchat notifications from my boyfriend, and I saw the absolute worst thing ever. The first 5 notifications were just him calling me names, and then all the other ones were just him doing stuff with my best friend. And you guys can already guess what I mean by doing stuff. So at this point, I was heartbroken, I was pissed off, but of course, because I gotta have the receipts, I went and took a video off my sister's phone of everything that he sent me. In the morning, I woke up to a text from an unknown number, and it turned out to be my boyfriend's best friend saying that him and Sarah were now together. So my boyfriend asked me to meet up and apologize. So I met him at this park, and he apologized to me, telling me that he wanted to get back together with me. But I told him to KMA, and I left. Then Sarah came to my house and keyed my car, and then we fought on my front lawn. And then after that, she was texting me about how she was coming back to my house. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how my best friend slept with my boyfriend. So like I said, she came to my house and she keyed my car. And I caught her, so I went outside. We fought on my front lawn. After she left, she kept sending me messages saying that she was coming back to my house so we could fight again. But she was blocked, so I didn't get any of the messages. And then my ex came to my house and brought me flowers. And this was all in a span of 1 day. So because it was my birthday party, my cousins were at my house, and I already told them everything that happened. So they went outside and they fought him. Well, then I ended up sending all the videos to his parents, her parents, his siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins who loved me. Then I also decided to take legal action, and I sent the cops all of the screenshots of Sarah harassing me. And my sister got a video of us fighting, so I sent that to them too. Well, since she was 18 and I literally just turned 16, she got 3 months in county jail for minor harassment and minor physical altercations. So in the end, I think I won.
Story time about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I'm a 27-year-old male. My girlfriend is 33. We started dating 2 years ago. A couple of months in, we started talking about marriage and she sounded really open to it. My dream has always been to get married and have kids. I never thought I would fall in love this hard. I have dated girls before, but I have never put in this much effort. To tell you that I took her to meet my parents 2 weeks after I met her, and even after 2 years, I keep falling in love with her. I'm really close to my parents and I decided to tell them that I wanted to marry her. They told me to go for it. So I planned a very elaborate proposal. I even got her 2 best friends to help me. I hired a photographer, a videographer, and I got the type of ring that I knew she would love from Tiffany's. The day of the proposal, everything went perfect. She showed up looking absolutely beautiful, her friends were hiding behind a bush, and the photographer and the videographer got everything just at the right time. But guess what the problem was? She said no. She told me that she definitely didn't think we were ready for marriage or even to be engaged. This is a fundamental flaw. I don't agree with her. So 2 weeks later, I proposed again. And guess what she said? Part 2 is up. Story time about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. So after she said no the first time, I decided to ask a second time. And this time she told me that she just wasn't convinced that I was the guy she wanted to marry. As you can imagine, this broke my heart. And I gotta tell you, I'm not a bad looking guy. I get hit on regularly by women, and all of the girlfriends I've had in my life that are just friends have told me that they would want to be in a relationship with a guy like me. I'm caring, kind, considerate, I'm funny. So for my girlfriend of 2 years to tell me that she wasn't convinced I was the guy for her broke me to my core. I even started questioning my manliness. Would I be a good provider? Would I be a good father? Do I even deserve these things? My girlfriend has been the only girl that has never chased me. I'm always the one getting chased by girls, and truthfully, it bores me. So maybe the fact that she's not chasing me is what keeps me interested in her. Which I know is so messed up, because maybe if she did say yes to marrying me, would I get bored of her? I asked her to marry me a 3rd time, and she said no again. My friends and family think I should break up with her, but I love her too much. I can't get enough of this girl. I want her to marry me. What should I do? Story time about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. So after she said no the first time, I decided to ask a second time. And this time she told me that she just wasn't convinced that I was the guy she wanted to marry. As you can imagine, this broke my heart. And I gotta tell you, I'm not a bad looking guy. I get hit on regularly by women, and all of the girlfriends I've had in my life that are just friends have told me that they would want to be in a relationship with a guy like me. I'm caring, kind, considerate, I'm funny. So for my girlfriend of 2 years to tell me that she wasn't convinced I was the guy for her broke me to my core. I even started questioning my manliness. Would I be a good provider? Would I be a good father? Do I even deserve these things? My girlfriend has been the only girl that has never chased me. I'm always the one getting chased by girls, and truthfully, it bores me. So maybe the fact that she's not chasing me is what keeps me interested in her. Which I know is so messed up, because maybe if she did say yes to marrying me, would I get bored of her? I asked her to marry me a 3rd time, and she said no again. My friends and family think I should break up with her, but I love her too much. I can't get enough of this girl. I want her to marry me. What should I do? My boyfriend confessed that he thinks I'm ugly. Here is the long requested update. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. After he told me that he would not marry me because he didn't consider me as pretty as I should be, I started asking him what he would change about me. Can you believe he sat down on his phone and made a list? An actual damn list. First on his list was, I was too heavy. He told me I needed to lose at least 20 pounds. I figured that shouldn't be too hard, so I got on a diet. Then he told me he preferred my natural hair color, which is brown. So I stopped dyeing my hair blonde and went completely brown. Oh yes, and his last request was that I get lip filler. He said that my thin lips have always bothered him. Then he told me I should look at more makeup tutorials to figure out how to do my makeup. Then he told me that I should tan in the sun to get some nice color on me. I know you guys want me to break up with him. What if I make all these changes and I'm actually healthier and happier? Not just for him, but for me. Since I last spoke to you guys, it's been about 2 weeks. I've only lost 2 pounds, but I'm on my way. I ended up getting lip filler and I love it. My lips look pretty but not exaggerated, so it actually looks nice. I also got Botox and cheek filler even though he did not request this. And to be honest, my face looks a lot better. It actually does like my new hair though. And I started sitting out in the sun, although I will start fake tanning because I do not want to get wrinkles. Mostly because self-care sister told me not to and I trust this girl. Since making all these changes, he's actually been a little bit nicer to me. In exchange for me making all these changes, he's spending more time with me and going out less with his friends. He's even taking me out on dates twice a week. Before I started making all these changes, I was always trying to look like something I wasn't. I was obsessed with being blonde and contouring, and he basically begged me not to contour anymore. So I asked Esther to do a tutorial for me, which she said she's gonna post. I feel like all he really wants me to do is focus on my self-care, and I'm totally willing to do that. I'll have to keep you guys updated, but so far so good. I did get myself a trainer and he actually got jealous, which I think is a good sign, right? Self-care sister out. Story time about how my date put something in my drink. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I have the worst luck with guys. I'm an extremely shy person. So I signed up to every dating app you can imagine. I matched with this guy on Hinge and he suggested that we talk for a few weeks before we even decided to meet up. And he meant like seriously talk. We texted pretty much all day long for 4 weeks. In the last week, we decided to FaceTime. At this point, I was completely and utterly obsessed with him. And then I realized that he looked like Ryan Gosling. Huge coincidence because Ryan Gosling is my biggest celebrity crush. After the 4 weeks, we decided to finally meet up. Second crazy coincidence, the bar we chose was local to both of us. Little did we know that we lived 2 minutes away from the bar in opposite directions. We went straight to the bar and started ordering drinks. We both had 2 drinks, and after 30 minutes, we ordered another set of drinks. Usually on a first date, I would never go for a third drink, but I liked him so much and I was so comfortable that I decided to get the third drink. Not even 4 minutes after I finished the drink, I start feeling so dizzy and sick. He obviously noticed right away and suggested that we go get some food. We walked around the corner to a pizza place and grabbed a bite. Suddenly, I'm in his apartment. He starts kissing me and tries to go, down there, and I kept saying no. Kissing became more aggressive, eventually leading him to pin my arms down to my sides. Out of nowhere, a UPS guy shows up and starts knocking on the door trying to get a signature. I ran out of that apartment so quickly, I reported him the next day. But when they tested my blood, they said there was nothing in my system. So basically, it's my word against his. Guess what? This guy has not stopped messaging me. I need to catch him in the act. What should I do?
Story time about how I almost got kidnapped by my online boyfriend. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 11th grade. So a year before this all happened, I posted a picture on Instagram saying, add me on Snapchat if you want to be friends. Yes, I was that person. Anyway, so this really cute guy adds me on Snapchat. And after about 3 months talking, he said that he wants to meet me in person. And he didn't sound sus at all, so I was like, sure. So we met at this park that was like 30 minutes away. And we met there around 6 o'clock, so when the sun was setting. And he was super nice. It was super romantic. Well, then we went to his house. We watched a movie and we did the nasty. So after that, he asked me if I want a drink. And what I could have swore was 20 minutes later, I wake up in an abandoned farm shed with no clothes or anything. So I start screaming my head off. I don't have my phone or anything, so I start to run. And then he grabs me. He says, if you try to run or you try to scream, I am going to kill you. Life for part 2 about how I almost got kidnapped by my online boyfriend. So like I said, I wake up in this abandoned farm shed. I don't have no clothes. I don't have a phone. So I try to run and he grabs me. He says that if you run, I will kill you. So I was like, okay, fine. What do you want from me? So he starts putting on lingerie and tells me to also put some on so we can take pictures together. What the actual what? So after that, he starts crying and he starts telling me his whole life story and how he's not who I think he is. Turns out that he's 32 and he just goes online pretending that he's 17 years old. So I just try to comfort him, right? It ends up working. He brings me my clothes, tells me to run, or else he's going to, once again, kill me. So I run, I go to this gas station, get picked up by the police, find my parents. Luckily for me, I paid attention to where everything was. He was arrested, he's still in prison to this day, and I got grounded for 3 months.
Story time about I caught my dad doing it with my neighbor. That's when my neighbor asked my dad for his number. I turned to her and I said, he's married to my mother, And then I pushed my dad into the elevator. I instantly started to cry. I was embarrassed and mortified. How can I have a father like that? I told him he was never to come to my building again and that he flirted with her first. He was twice her age. Disgusting. He told me that I was overreacting and that the only person that made it weird and gross was me. Luckily, it did not take us long to move in all my boxes, but then he kept looking for excuses to stay. I asked him to leave 3 times, and all of a sudden, the girl walks out of the apartment that was right in front of me, meaning she's my neighbor. My dad started talking to her again. That's when I closed my apartment door and locked him out. Could hear them talking for a few minutes, so I put on my music and started unpacking. And then I called my mom immediately to tell her, and I begged her to come live with me. Then she told me that she got into a really big fight with my dad about it. I was so angry, I opened my door and just left. I see my dad and her still talking in the hallway. I didn't say anything and I left. Went to pick up my mom and I took her out for lunch. My mom and I decided to go back to my apartment to unpack. I walked up to my apartment first, and as soon as I opened the door, that's when I see my dad's naked butt on top of my neighbor. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I caught my dad doing the dirty with my neighbor. My lying, cheating father helped me move into my new apartment. I have to be honest and say my dad is narcissistic. He's always been selfish, thinks he's always right. There's just no way to reason with him when he's wrong. My sister and I are very tight with my mom. We will always side with her. By the way, my parents parents are still married. They've been together for 37 years. My sister's 30 and I'm 22. I recently landed my dream job, and this meant that I needed to find an apartment closer to my job. So I moved about half an hour away from my parents. My dad travels for work a lot, which is the best. It means he's not home a lot. So I told my mom that she should move into my apartment with me. She said that she would think about it. My move-in day finally arrived. My mom and my sister had to help me pack and organize everything. My dad didn't lift a finger, so I asked him to help me move all the boxes into my apartment. He said yes. The moment we get into my apartment, he sees a really pretty girl, and he just starts talking to her like I'm not even there. For some reason, this girl starts flirting back. I was appalled and disgusted. She then asked my dad for his phone number. What the heck? Part 2 is story time, but I caught my dad doing the dirty with my neighbor. As soon as I see my dad's naked butt on top of my neighbor, I just started yelling. I needed them to know that I was in the room. How dare my dad do this in my apartment? I mean, couldn't he go to her apartment? 20 steps behind me was my mom, and as soon as I yell, she runs in. Mind you, my dad is still on top of this girl. When he sees my mom, he jumps up. The girl is completely naked, grabs her clothes, and runs over to her apartment. My dad didn't even bother to cover his dingling. It was the most horrendous thing that had ever happened to me. That's when my mom says, I want a divorce and I'm moving in with her. He didn't say a word. He calmly put his clothes back on and walked out. Didn't give an explanation, didn't apologize, nothing. A true narcissist. When he finally leaves, my mom and I start to cry. We called my sister and she came over. We went back to my parents' house and grabbed all of my mom's stuff. We didn't even have time for boxes, we just grabbed trash bags. My mom and I are living together, but guess what? My dad is now dating my neighbor. He's never apologized to my mom. They did get a divorce, thank God. We have to see him all the time at her apartment. How do I break them up?
Story time. My boyfriend cheated on me with the girl best friend. So a little background information. I was 17 and a junior in high school, and my boyfriend and I had been dating for a year. But just a little backstory about when we got together. So there were definitely some red flags that I missed, okay? One of them being that he had a girl best friend. And I don't care what y'all have to say if that makes me insecure or what, but coming from someone who has been the girl best friend, I knew this was not good at all. Especially whenever we first started dating and she was still being super friendly with him, meaning she would hold his hand, she would hang on him 24/7. And when I told him I was super uncomfortable with that and I felt like there needed to be some boundaries, he was like, yeah, I told you what it was whenever we got together. So if you don't like that, then just break up with me. Looking back on it now, that was also a red flag because I feel like he was telling me to break up with him so that way he didn't have to break up with me, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with the girl best friend. So like I said, she would still hang all over him and he pretty much told me, if you don't like that, then you can leave. Obviously, I did not want to leave because I liked him and he was my boyfriend. So I just kept putting up with it, and eventually, we got 6 months into our relationship. So at that point, I'm thinking maybe I have a little bit more authority, to be like, hey, I don't like the way that she acts around you. You guys can't hang out like that anymore. And they would hang out alone together. He would take her to dinner. I literally tried telling him that the stuff that they do together is relationship stuff. And he was like, that's not true at all because we did all of this stuff before you and I even got together. So anyways, like I said, 6 months in, I'm like, hey, I don't like the way that you guys are hanging around each other. Once again, he gives me the same excuse. So he pretty much said that he didn't care. And the one night him and I were supposed to hang out, but he canceled on me last minute. And her and I didn't get along and she never Snapchatted me before, but then I get a Snapchat of her and him making out at his house.